Good morning, everyone. My name is Merle Massey, and I'm the coordinator of undergraduate research here at the University of Saskatchewan. This recording is for the SURE program, Student Undergraduate Research Experience, that I run here at the university. And welcome. And you don't necessarily have to be an undergraduate student to be with us today or to enjoy the learning that we will be having today. And with us, our guest speaker today is Brock Egato, who is from Career Services here at the University of Saskatchewan. And he's going to be talking to us about networking and LinkedIn. And with that, Brock, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Merle. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining for this session here today on networking and LinkedIn. So just to introduce myself a little bit more, as Merle said, my name is Brock Egato. I'm an experiential learning coordinator at Career Services. So if that name is unfamiliar to you, we were formerly known as the Student Employment and Career Center and only just changed our name about a month or two ago. So bit of a shift in direction for us as we change some of the strategic direction of our office, shifting more into the experiential learning realm, and just hopefully working to better support students and alumni and all the different community partners that we work with. So yes, jumping in today to talk about networking and LinkedIn. This isn't a very long presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about, oh, I'm just going to skip ahead here, a little bit about in-person networking. For the last year and a half or so, there probably hasn't been a lot of in-person networking for most of us. It's been a lot of virtual connections, but coming back this fall, I think we're going to start seeing events again and at least have an opportunity to meet with people in person and be able to engage in ways that, is maybe a little bit more difficult online. So I'm going to talk about some of the strategies or ways to approach in-person networking. They're going to move into discussing LinkedIn and the ways that you would set up a LinkedIn profile to serve as an effective, essentially online resume or CV. And then I'm going to talk about how to use that platform to build your virtual network. So when we talk about networking, the idea behind it really is that by going out and networking and meeting with people and having conversations, showing up to events, essentially you're increasing your visibility. And by increasing your visibility, ultimately you're hopefully increasing your chances of career success as well. I always like to talk about myself in this regard here and how networking has benefited myself and my career. A number of different jobs that I have come by throughout my career have come through connections that I've made by volunteering for different organizations or at different events. And just by having conversations with people, maintaining those connections through email or through LinkedIn, and then kind of just being available for opportunities or open to opportunities that might present themselves to me. So a number of opportunities have come to me through this way. My position on campus, I got through an old connection from high school, actually. We had connected on LinkedIn, and she pointed me towards an opportunity that was on campus, put in a good word for me, and that's how I first got onto campus here. So networking, it's absolutely crucial for many people in improving their chances of career success or finding opportunities out there. Many job opportunities aren't necessarily posted online, or you may not come across them, and you might just hear about them through your networks. So very important, even as a student, to start thinking about building those networks and maintaining those networks, because you never know really when those connections are going to pay off for you. So coming to thinking about in-person networking again, I think something that is lost with all this virtual connecting is that we just don't really have much of an opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with people. we might be meeting new people through different, Zoom events or WebEx events or different meetings and that sort of thing. But we don't have that opportunity to connect one on one. It's everybody's in a room together and it's one person or another leading a conversation. And so that's something that's missing a little bit from all these virtual connections that we've had. So, I think, this fall and certainly in the winter, we're going to start seeing a lot more just opportunities to come together. With our peers, with faculty members, with different industry representatives at, career fairs or networking events, that sort of thing. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how you might approach having some of those conversations. And I think a lot of this comes very naturally to many people, but for others, this might be something that feels a little bit unnatural, something that's a little bit uncomfortable for them. So I just kind of want to break down some of the stress or anxiety that might come with having some of those conversations and thinking about networking. And so when I talk about networking, for me, really all that really means is, having conversations with people, just getting to know them a little bit, and then just, adding them to your network, maintaining those connections when you have a strong conversation with somebody and you feel like you want to, maintain that long term. So when you're out there at events or just in your everyday life, having conversations with people, uh, here's a few important things that you might want to think about discussing in order to maintain that network in the sense of your career and your career direction. So, say you're at a networking event or a career fair. These are helpful things to be talking about. So, what are you studying and why? A lot of people are very good at describing the courses that they're taking, their program that they're in, but they're not as good at talking about why. Why are you studying that particular major? What are you passionate about? What excites you about that particular program? And then kind of continuing with that idea, where do you see that going? What are your career interests, your career goals? um, you need to have a fairly good sense of all of these things, obviously, to understand where you're going in your career, but also it really leads to very good conversation at these kinds of events. Other things to think about or talk about, thinking about what are a few interesting or relevant things about yourself. So maybe you're involved in different extracurriculars, co-curricular activities. Maybe you've done some really interesting internships, or you've got other things that just really excite you and that you're passionate about. All those are great things to talk about. And then what brings you to this event and what are you hoping to get out of it? So if you're attending a career fair, if you're attending, employer information session, some kind of other industry events, it's helpful to understand, what are you hoping to ultimately get out of that event? Maybe it's just to learn a little bit more about your industry, learn about new opportunities, or maybe it is just about making connections. But these are all the kinds of things that you might potentially be talking about at those sorts of events. So it helps to come prepared to think about these things and discuss these things. Um, just a couple other things that might, seem fairly obvious on the surface, but at the same time, they're really important. A lot of people maybe struggle with some of these things a little bit. Um, and the first one there is just the handshake. So we might not be shaking hands a lot right now, but I'm sure it's going to come back, fairly soon. It's just your standard greeting at, a lot of these kinds of events. You shake a person's hand when you meet them. And there is such a thing as a professional handshake. I think a lot of people maybe don't realize that. But basically, a professional handshake is just, it's a firm grip on another person's hand, one or two pumps, and that's it. So, sometimes you'll see people who maybe give you that kind of like dead fish handshake, and they lay that hand out there, and you kind of just shake it around, and it doesn't feel like a very professional or confident handshake. Some people will grab your hand and squeeze it just far too tightly, like they're trying to establish dominance with you or something like that. And it can be kind of uncomfortable. It's a little bit strange. So again, there is such a thing as a professional handshake. There is a way to make a good impression right off the start with that. So something to think about. Maybe practice if you're not used to it or you're uncomfortable with that. But just be prepared that at most events, eventually we're going to start shaking people's hands again. As you're talking to people, make eye contact, smile, be genuine, be engaged. Again, probably on the surface, all fairly obvious things, but it's important to keep in mind as well. If you are hoping to make strong connections with people, if you're talking to somebody, having a conversation, you do want to make sure that you appear engaged with them. You're asking them questions, you're talking to them. That just leads to a far greater likelihood that you'll end up staying connected or being able to connect on LinkedIn. So very important to keep that in mind as well. At the start, when you're shaking your hand as well, just introduce yourself. All you really have to do is give your name. Some people might give, their organization if they're coming from a certain company or industry. If you're a student, perhaps, maybe you'll introduce your major or what you're studying. One thing that people really struggle with is, at that moment, it's kind of a nervous situation. You're meeting somebody new, you're shaking their hand, you're introducing yourself, you're trying to get it right. They give you your name or their name, and then you forget it immediately. This is something that I really struggle with. I say, "Oh yeah, hi, nice to meet you," and then I just completely blank on what their name is. So a little trick there: when they give you their name, just repeat it back to them. Say, hi, nice to meet you, Brock. My name is, whatever. But just a little trick of repeating it back to them will, hopefully kind of embed that in your mind a little bit easier. So little tips to keep in mind, just hopefully makes that go a little bit smoother for you, especially if this is, again, something that's maybe makes you a little bit uncomfortable. You haven't had a lot of practice with it. So this will make it a little bit easier for you. Um, so you go through the conversation, you have a nice connection there with somebody that you just met. Kind of way to wrap that up. Keep in mind, if you're at a career fair or information session, some other kind of networking event, you don't want to monopolize somebody's time either, right? Maybe talking to them for a few minutes is appropriate. You kind of got to feel it out though a little as well. But you get to the point where you're wrapping up that conversation with somebody. A good way to end that is just to thank them for their time, for the conversation. Maybe ask them for their business card if they have one. Shake their hand again. Nice way to wrap that up. If you do get a business card, it's a good idea to just maybe make a couple of notes on the back of it. So reminders to yourself of when and where you met this person and maybe what you discussed if there was something kind of important about that conversation that you want to remember and attach to that person. This then allows you or makes it easier for you, obviously, to go and then connect with them on LinkedIn. So if you actually have their name, this card, it makes it a lot easier to find them on LinkedIn. In some cases, you might be able to find lists of people attending an event, and which case then you can go and find that online and connect with them that way. If they don't have business cards, or maybe you can just remember your name, but business cards makes it a lot easier. And so that leads us into talking about LinkedIn. So that's really it about networking at events. It's not overly complicated. Again, it's just going out there and having conversations with people, genuine conversations, making genuine connections, and then keeping that network. And so keeping that network is really about these days, at least, LinkedIn. And so, what is LinkedIn? So basically, it's your online resume or your online CV. It's your online network as well. So it's your way to maintain all these connections, to find out, a little bit more about who they are, what they do, to kind of follow their careers a little bit, find out what they're interested in as well. So I'll get into some of what that looks like actually within LinkedIn. But it's also a way to conduct some occupational or company research. So you can learn a lot about different organizations or different industries through LinkedIn, maybe even just by checking the profiles of the people that you're connecting with. If they happen to be in positions, companies, or industries that are particularly of interest to you, you can potentially learn a lot just by looking at their profiles. And it's also a place to search and apply for jobs. So I'm going to leave the presentation here, and I'm just going to go over to LinkedIn because it's a lot easier to talk about it when we're actually looking at it. So hopefully you can see that all right. Merle or somebody, could you just let me know if you're actually looking at my
We sure
browser?
can. Yeah,
Oh,
Brock, I can see it fine.
great. Thank you. Okay. So this is just the homepage of LinkedIn. This is my homepage here. Looks kind of busy, so I'm just going to go through it and let you know what to look for here. So right in the middle, this is the feed here. So these are all my connections that are, posting about career updates, things that are of interest to them within their organization or their own careers. Some advertisements come up in here as well. A lot of people posting about events coming up within their organization. Some people write little articles, that sort of thing. So if you're very engaged in your industry, you might consider, making some posts in here, or at least sharing certain things that are of interest to you. So you can kind of treat it a little bit like, I suppose, your Facebook news feed, but this is your professional version of that. So a good way to have conversations with people, stay connected through this feed here, and to show that you're engaged as well. Okay, so that's the feed. That's your homepage here. I'm not going to get into all this other stuff. A lot of it's just kind of different things of interest to you. But I'm going to jump over to my personal profile right now. And so again, LinkedIn primarily, I would say, functions as your online resume or CV. And so this is what it looks like, at least from my personal perspective. I'm going to jump over to a colleague's profile after I go through this, and we'll have a look at hers and how that differs as well. So if you haven't created a profile before, I'm just going to kind of go through this in some detail here so you understand how to build this LinkedIn profile for yourself. So first off, you want to have a professional photo up here of yourself. Very important that it is a professional photo, or at least a nice clean photo. Not like your often Facebook type photos. You want to be a little bit better than that here. Background photo. This is kind of optional. This is just a picture I took of campus, but it makes it look kind of nice and clean here. Under my name, I have my current position and organization that I work for, as well as my location, contact info, so that people can reach out to me. Really, it's just my email here right now. You can put your phone number in there as well, I believe, but it's just whatever you're comfortable with including. My dashboard here just kind of shows some of the engagement that's been happening with my profile recently. So I've appeared on 7 people's searches. My posts have had 200 views, so my feed, and then 17 people have viewed my profile recently. So this is something that differs a little bit from some other, I guess, social media platforms, is that you can actually see who's viewed your profile. So if you're looking at other people's profiles, they will see that you've been looking at that. That's fine. That's what we do. That's what LinkedIn's about. It's about learning about other people's credentials and careers and that sort of thing. So just be aware that that's a thing that people can see if you've viewed their profile. Okay, so scrolling down here, there's your about statement section. And so this, it doesn't have to be very long. Mine's kind of on the shorter end here, where it's just, one short paragraph or a long sentence, actually. Some people might have a couple of paragraphs. And really all you're trying to do here is just kind of introduce yourself kind of at a higher level. So maybe what your current position and organization is, what you do in your current role. Maybe if you're a student or somebody who's looking for work, you're going to talk a little bit more generally about your career area or your area of expertise, and maybe what your career interests are, especially if you're using this in your job search. So that's something that might get worked into your about statement. Again, 1 to 2 sentences up to a couple of paragraphs is pretty standard for your about statement. Activity is just things that I'm connected to, people that I'm following, things that are going on there. I won't get into that. It's more or less like your feed. But now we'll get into more like the actual CV or resume type content. So first you'll see the experience section here. And so I don't have every job that I've ever done on here because I've had a lot of jobs, especially going back to first couple of years of university, that sort of thing. It's more the things that I find might be relevant if I happen to be looking for work in the future, or just to kind of give a snapshot of my career. And so most of it right now is the experiences or positions that I've had on campus here. So you can see that I've had 4 different positions at the University of Saskatchewan. And then the most recent one, or the one just before my current position, I have a little bit of information here on what I was actually doing in that position. I just moved into my current position and I haven't had a chance to really update what I'm doing yet, but that will be the next thing for me, is to go in here and start talking about this current position of mine. Some of these past positions where, I'm not really concerned with including a lot of this content about what I was doing. I just have the organization, position title, dates that I was there. And that's all I really feel I need to include. Usually by my job titles, it's fairly obvious what I was doing there anyway. You might instead choose, though, that to include some information describing these past roles of yours, um, especially highlighting, skill sets that you demonstrated or developed, maybe achievements that you had through those positions, major projects that you worked on, all good things to include there. Very, very similar to what you would see on a resume or CV. So that's the experience section. Some people will choose to include volunteer experience in here as well. I have instead included it down under a separate volunteer experience section. I'll maybe just jump down to that right now. So very, very similar to your actual or to the work experience section that I had. Positions, organizations, and a little bit about what I was doing at those different volunteer roles. So coming back up here now to education. So I have all my degrees here, or major certifications. And with this one here, I included a little bit of extra information because I felt that it wasn't super clear exactly what this was about. So in some cases, you might want to just elaborate on your education a little bit. If you had, a thesis that you worked on or different publications, you might include that here, but there's also a separate section where you can include publications on your LinkedIn profile. So that's your education. Licenses and certifications, if you happen to have them, you might want to include those here as well. So I just have a couple of those that I've decided to include. Things that for me, again, will potentially be relevant, if I, am looking for work in the future. Other licenses and certifications that I didn't feel were relevant, I just don't include. Okay, so moving now down into the skills and endorsements section. So I'm going to expand this here because I've got quite a few listed. And so these are, for the most part, skills that I have added on here. And so you would just go up into this add a new skill section here, and you can, search for different ones. You can find various kinds of communication skill sets that are just built right in there. So you can add them that way. You can just type in your own as well. You don't have to pull them from the list. And so basically, you just want to capture all the different skills, again, that you feel are going to be relevant in your career or in your job search, and get them all in there. And then as you start to build up your network, ideally, people are going to be going in and endorsing you for these different skills. So you can see that my most endorsed skill set up here is research, followed by teaching, which is kind of interesting because I have a teaching degree, but through this current role, I do things like this where I'm doing a little bit of teaching, obviously. So I've had quite a bit of endorsements for that, as well as event planning. And then it kind of goes down here and you see all the different endorsements for various skills that I've had. And so it's just my network who's going in and doing these endorsements. So it helps to reciprocate, endorse your network for skill sets that you know that they have, and hopefully they'll go in there and do the same thing for you. Okay, so that's the skills section. And then down here, this is kind of, it's just called accomplishments, but there's a number of different types of sections that you can include here. Languages is one of them. courses. So there are certain courses that I felt I just wanted to include on here, again, because it kind of captured my overall education. Some of these things I felt might be relevant to jobs that I'm applying for. And so for that reason, I've chosen to include certain courses here. Obviously, not every course I've ever taken, just things that I felt might be relevant to point out on here. Um, so there's all kinds of other sections that you would include down here. So here's that publications, things like patents, projects that you worked on, honors and awards, yeah, all kinds of different stuff here that you might potentially include in the accomplishments section. Okay, and then last section on here that I'm going to show you is just the interests. So things that I am following, different organizations, things like the University of Saskatchewan. There's a group here, University Career Fair Coordinators, I'm a part of. I can pop it up here and see all the different things that I'm interested in and essentially following. So, if you're in a certain industry or interested in a certain industry, there might be organizations or different professional associations that you might want to follow on here, just to stay engaged and stay connected. Okay, so that's the profile. Again, not super different from your CV or your resume, almost entirely the same. Um, I always tell people when they're creating their resume that they don't have to include everything that they've ever done. You really just want to be including on your resume the stuff that's at least in some way relevant to the job that you're applying for. That's a little bit different with your LinkedIn profile, where there might be other things on here that you aren't including on your resume. So if you're applying for jobs, they like what they see on your cover letter and on your resume, they might go to your LinkedIn profile. And here they might discover just a little bit more about you. Some of the things that aren't directly relevant, but are maybe interesting. Maybe some skill sets that they hadn't described, in their job description, but still do a good job of selling the kind of person you are, the kind of candidate you are, or potential employee that you are. So again, you can include a lot more information here on your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so I just want to jump over to my colleague Allie's profile here, just to show you what another one looks like, or what it looks like when you're looking at somebody else's. So very similar up here. She's involved in elk farming, so that's why you see that background photo there. So it just tells a little bit of her story up there, right in the photo. She's got her about statement here. It's a little bit more elaborate than mine. Really getting into what she's doing in her current role, what her passions are, that sort of thing. She's done a lot more to really elaborate on some of her past experiences here. So this looks great. A lot of great information in here. So even if somebody's doing some headhunting, they're looking for certain kinds of employees through LinkedIn, which is something that happens as well. People use LinkedIn to headhunt. You can do all kinds of searches for experience and skills and that sort of thing and come up with different people's names. So it's helpful to have a lot of information here for that reason as well. All this looks fairly similar to mine as well. A little bit more information on her volunteer experience here. I just wanted to, I suppose, mostly show you the skills section. So very similar to mine, but this is how you can go in and endorse other people. So beside their different skill sets, you see this little plus sign here, and I can go in and basically just endorse Allie for her leadership skills, which I know she does have those. So, and then you can get into a little bit more information on that, and kind of give a a better endorsement here. So let's see, I can worked with worked directly on Allie or with Allie. So that's how you can go in there and really give very good endorsements for people's skill sets. And again, hopefully this helps to encourage people to reciprocate and go in there and endorse you. Okay, so that's all I want to show you here with the profiles. Just a few other things about LinkedIn. So I'm going to jump over to the My Network section up here. And so you can see, your network, the people that you're connected to. I have a few invitations here from different people to connect. When people send me invitations to connect, it's kind of a personal thing. Sometimes I just don't see any connection of how they've come to me, and I think there are some people who go out there and just kind of randomly add everybody basically that they can find. And so I don't necessarily accept those. I'm more likely to accept somebody who sends me a brief message saying why they're connecting. And so you can see how that pops up right here. So this person here has just sent me a little message. They're a USask alum, and that's why they're connecting. So I'm just far more likely to connect with people who put in that just very minor effort to tell me why they're trying to connect with me. So I encourage you to do that as well. If you're going out there and especially trying to connect with people you've never met before, at least send them a little message to say, this is why I'm interested in connecting. And so maybe it's that, it's a company that you're interested in, or it's the position or industry that you're interested in. Maybe they are a USask alum, and that's another reason why you're wanting to connect with them. So just give them that little bit of extra information. That'll really help to make this network building a little bit easier for you. So I think that's all I want to really say here. I mean, LinkedIn does give you a lot of suggestions, kind of like Facebook does, I suppose. People to follow, people who I might be kind of connected to through other people I work with, or who are maybe in similar roles. Just suggestions of people that I might want to add to my network. So that can be helpful sometimes as well. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to show you there. And then the last thing I wanted to show you, and getting pretty near the end here, again, LinkedIn does function as well as a job search site. So you can search for all kinds of different jobs in all sorts of different ways, by location. You can search by title, skill, company, get all kinds of information on different job postings out there. So it can be really great as a job search tool as well for that by using this functionality here. And then it will even give you like suggested job searches. So, because I'm in career services, it gives me a couple of different job titles that might be relevant to me. And so I can just click on these and see what relevant positions are out there. And more and more organizations are using LinkedIn as a primary tool in recruitment. So you're finding a lot more job postings on here these days. University of Saskatchewan uses it quite a lot. And so, you want to make sure that it is a part of your job search. Okay, so I think that's it. Like I said, not a very long presentation. LinkedIn's not, especially complicated. It's often just a matter of transferring your CV or your resume over to this platform, making some tweaks to it, and then going about building your network. And that's really what it's about. So I think I'm going to stop sharing screen here. And
I'm going to stop the recording, but then we're going to open it up for questions. Thank you, Brock, for being with us today.
You're welcome.